Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Today I want to talk about how the Black community is actually full of colorists. It's not the light skinned community, it's not the mixed community, it's not the Horn African community that are the most colorist, texturist, and featurist. It's actually the unambiguous dark skinned Black community that is the most colorist. And I'm going to be talking about Anaya from Love Island. She's a wonderful example of someone who is clearly colorist and color struck. In fact, I saw some photos of her going viral. People are accusing Anaya of acting light skinned and thinking she's white, and they're making Chat GPT images and turning her into a light skinned girl with curly hair. And they're basically saying, this is who Anaya thinks she is, or this is who she is on the inside. So they're basically calling her an Oreo. And I've noticed sometimes when people call dark skinned Black people an Oreo, they're not always saying that, oh, you're acting white. Sometimes what they're really implying is you wish you were white or you wish you were light skinned. And that is the vibe that Anaya gives off from Love Island. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about hair textures and her wig. So recently she went viral for having a stiff, curly wig. I find it interesting that people are constantly talking about Exoticals hair and wigs. People are constantly obsessing over MLS women and what types of wigs and weaves we wear. People are constantly obsessing over whether our hair textures are real or not. But then I see people actually defending Anaya. They're defending this stiff ass wig. It is literally, this entire back of her head looks like one big giant freeform dreadlock. And so it's interesting how when it comes to dark skinned Black women, the main argument is, oh, stay out of women's business. And it's like, okay, you want people to stay out of unambiguous women's business, but then you don't want to stay out of the Exoticals business. People were taking all kinds of clips of Soul. They were taking all kinds of clips of the light skinned women on Love Island and, trying to say they don't like their leave out. And it's like, okay, first of all, at least these women have leave out. Anaya is over here wearing a wig that has no leave out. There's no part, nothing. It's stiff as hell. If you're going to be in Fiji for a month, why would you only bring one wig? See, that tells me that she's following this culture of hair neglect. And obviously, I can't prove that, but that is very common in the Black community. A lot of times, women are not wearing extensions to enhance their hair. They're wearing the extensions to cover their hair, and they're going to neglect their hair underneath. Hair neglect is very common in the dark skinned Black community. If you don't believe me, just go type in dark skin 4C on TikTok and you're going to see all kinds of girls talking about how their mothers permed their hair when they were 2 years old. You might even see some videos of babies with lace fronts on. That's very common in the unambiguous Black community, putting lace fronts on babies and slicking the edges and just brushing their hair into oblivion until it falls out, because there's an obsession with looking like a dark skinned mixed woman. So that's the standard of beauty in the dark skinned Black community. The standard would be somebody like Justine Skye or Ryan Destiny. Both of those women are mixed race. Both of those women have keen features and looser hair textures. So that's the standard that Anaya is trying to meet. Remember, I said you can always tell what someone's beauty standard is based on how they do their beauty. If you want to figure out what someone's internalized beauty standard is, all you have to do is just look at their beauty routine. What hair textures do they wear the most? What makeup looks do they wear the most? Are they contouring their nose? I noticed that Anaya has a tendency to kind of shrink her eyes and kind of close her eyes off with her makeup. She likes to wear a lot of dark eyeliner to kind of give her eyes that cat-like slant. So that's very common in the Asian community. So it's very clear based on Anaya's aesthetic that she loves Blasian Exoticals. And isn't that ironic that my talking point ended up being right? Because when Corbin came into the villa, he's a biracial guy, he's a Blasian guy. As soon as he came into the villa, she was all over him. She said that it was every woman's dream to be with a man who has caramel skin and green eyes and looks like Corbin. No, that's actually your dream, Anaya. So you literally just exposed how much you pedestalize this light skin, ambiguous, and this Blasian phenotype. And I've also noticed that the Black female fan base of Love Island, they worship any man who's not dark skinned. Black women are going to worship any man who's lighter than them. Okay, so he could be a light skinned guy, he could be biracial, he could be white, Asian, whatever. Anyone who's lighter than them, they're going to put him on a pedestal, because I recently saw as well that black women are worshiping Drewski. You know, the fat MLS guy, the fat mix guy, the comedian. So they're currently worshiping Drewski and putting him on a pedestal because he said that Olandria was fine shit during his comedy routine, by the way. So if somebody says during a comedy routine that you are fine shit, I don't know how to really take that. But either way, people are praising Drewski and, you know, they're celebrating it, saying that this is a validation of Olandria's beauty. So like I said, they worship the validation of any man who's lighter than them. If Drewski would have been a dark-skinned black man, do you really think they would have cared? No, they would have said, oh, that's a dusty, you know, just another dusty black comedian. They wouldn't care. But even if you look at the black female demographic online, whose content do they watch? What streamers do they worship? What rappers and R&B singers do they worship? Well, they're going to follow people like Chris Brown. They're going to follow the Drewskis. They're going to worship the Nick from Nicolandria. They're going to worship Trinity and Bryce from Love Island because most of them fantasize about having access or validation from a man who is lighter than them. So I find it interesting how they call the exotical space colorist when the most colorist community to this day is still the black female demographic. Go look at their videos. Even if they're trying to talk shit about exoticals, you'll see them saying things like, oh, well, she's dark. Well, she's dark anyway, and she has nappy hair anyway. Oh, look how big her nose is. Look how big her lips are. So they will make fun of black features on mixed women, and then they will try to create babies that erase their own black features. So you can't tell me that you believe that you are the beauty standard when your first option for creating babies is making a biracial baby. Oh, speaking of that, a woman actually went viral as well. She's an unambiguous black woman. She went viral for becoming a single mother by choice just so she could birth a biracial baby. Because like I said, most people want to date us or create us, and so they pedestalize biracial relationships. So like, let's say it's a black woman with like a white man or whatever. They pedestalize those relationships because once those people get married and have kids, they're going to have the markers of success, which is having mixed babies, having babies that are lighter than you, having babies that look more ambiguous than you, having babies that have smaller noses than you, they have smaller lips than you, smaller eyes. Oh, and by the way, going back to using Aniya as an example from Love Island, not only does she lack social skills, that comes from motherhood neglect, by the way. Women who lack social skills, they lack femininity skills. Usually that's from actually having mommy issues. It's from not having a good female role model in your life. Apparently people are saying that Aniya's mom is like kind of an IG baddie or whatever. I mean, that could be good or bad. I didn't look up her mother, but one of the things I noticed with Aniya in Love Island is she had bad social skills. She was chasing after any man who was lighter than her in that villa. So on day one, Aniya's goal was to avoid KC. Her goal was to avoid the black man, the darkest man in the villa. And by the way, I am not a KC defender. I do think that he is by far one of the dustiest guys in the villa. But she chased after Sincere in the beginning of the show. And I've noticed that Aniya has a tendency to be a sidekick or follow behind whatever Melanie does. I've never heard any other creators talk about this, but I'm really starting to notice it as Love Island closes out. Literally, whatever Melanie does, Aniya is going to do. So I noticed in the first episode, Aniya, she immediately chose Sincere as her connection, but from the very first episode, you can actually see Sincere and Melanie, they were kind of like eyeing each other. So Aniya has a tendency to chase after men who don't want her. Kenzie struggles with the same thing. So these types of women, they are women who have received very low validation. And so that's a common issue I've noticed in the black female community. A lot of women in the black community have received low validation for their skin complexions and their hair textures and features. And so when it comes to the men they choose, they're going to pick any man who does not have her features. They're going to pedestalize and praise any sort of relationship where the man is lighter than the woman. It is safe to say that is the standard of relationships currently in the black female community in 2026. Black love is dead. They don't want anything to do with that. They certainly don't want dark-skinned black love. Oh no, you can kick that shit to the curb. It's all about the soft life. It's all about creating babies that are lighter. It's all about bringing that ambiguity into your bloodline. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people will brag about their light-skinned siblings or their light-skinned parent or their light-skinned daughter? Have you ever been at a cookout or at a church or something, and then you'll be talking to somebody black, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, well, my daughter's lighter than you." Yeah, because her dad is Asian. Her dad is Samoan. Her dad is Pacific Islander. So yeah, my daughter's lighter than you. She has looser hair than yours. So it's seen as a flex currently in the black female spaces. It is viewed as a flex to have access to a man who's lighter than you. It's viewed as a flex to be dating men who are lighter than you. It's a flex to have a boyfriend who is lighter than you. It's a flex to be complimented by Drewski because he's lighter than you. And some of you guys are going to be like, no, Exoticals United. There are a lot of women who still support unambiguous black men. Yeah, but those are the Hotep women. So generally speaking, the majority of the black community is no longer Hotep, especially most black women. Most of them are not actually Hoteps. I think a lot of them, they just follow what the lighter women are doing. Well, who do white women date? Oh, they date white men. Okay, so now I'm going to date white men. I'm going to divest and swirl. Okay, well, who are Asian women dating? Who are Mexican women dating? Oh, okay, they date Asian and Mexican men. Oh, they like K-pop guys? Okay, now I like K-pop guys. So you see this trend online where you've got a lot of unambiguous women. They're following pages like, I can't remember her name right now, but she's a very popular image consultant. The lady with the glasses, I think her name's Ashley. They go on pages like that and they're getting advice for like shopping at Zara, because apparently if you shop at Zara, you're supposed to be more likely to attract a white billionaire. I don't know where they got that talking point from. That's laughable to me. But they'll say these things like, oh, just shop at Zara or just get yourself a hard wig, hard wig, soft life. And they'll make pages on Reddit and Lipstick Alley trying to strategize on how to attract these men who are lighter than them. So calling the exotical space colorist is just laughable. I mean, that's really laughable. Just look at the dating community in 2026. Most women who are a part of the decentering men movement as well, a lot of those subscribers are actually disingenuous. The only reason some of those women decenter men is because they can't get a white man. It's because they can't get a biracial man. They can't get a light-skinned man. They can't get an Asian man. They can't get anybody except a black, dark-skinned man. And so they're like, hey, I'm just going to decenter men altogether because, I'm basically fucked. And I can't get the guys I really want, which are the men who are lighter than me. So to call the Exoticals colorist is just so laughable while simultaneously promoting colorism in the 2026 dating market. Literally standing couples like Trinity and Bryce on Love Island simply because Bryce is white. We really don't know who Bryce is outside of the villa. Standing couples like Nicolandria. Oh, and did I mention that Nicolandria is, he's still not claiming her over a year later, by the way. Still not claiming Olandria more than 1 year after they were supposedly in the talking stage. He's been pictured with several other YT women. Apparently Nick was spotted in a club begging for pay for play. So Olandria is actually being treated like trash by Nick. Olandria also admitted that Nick is cheap, and we saw that because he didn't get her any good gifts for like her birthday, Christmas, Valentine's Day. They didn't even go on a date. They were literally hanging out in a group. Olandria spent the past year chasing Nick all over the country, showing up to all of his DJing events, all of his dusty little DJ events where he plays EDM music and tries to act like he's cool or whatever. She spent her time giving him a makeover. And by the way, they are now praising Nick, saying, oh, that's the effect of having a black girlfriend. They're saying that Nick looks better since he started dating Olandria. You know how they had the black wife effect? And it was basically a bunch of black women. They were praising other black women for building up these white men. So basically they would take a basic incel looking white guy and then they would turn him into a wigga. They would help him to grow a beard and they would put chains on him, or they would start styling their husband to make him look like this caricature of blackness. And then they were calling that the black wife effect, saying that like, oh, these men look so much better. They're so much more attractive because a black woman basically built that man up. Imagine having to be a personal image consultant for a YT man. And by the way, what's this image consulting obsession in the black community? I don't see any other race or ethnicity of people on the internet so obsessed with image as black people. I don't see not one white version of Kevin Samuels where he was like telling women what they should look like. I don't see not one white version of that Ashley lady where they're telling white women, oh no, you need to get a more expensive wig. No, you need to get your nails done. You need to shop at Zara. Why is it that it's only in the unambiguous, dark skinned black community where they're obsessed with telling women, oh, your wig is not good enough? You need to spend more money on the wig. And by the way, has anyone else noticed how in the black community, consumerism seems to be offered as a solution to their problems? Oh, just spend more money. Then all your problems will be solved. Just buy a more expensive wig. Get a more expensive manicure. Just start shopping at Zara. Don't shop at Fashion Nova and all these other brands. Like, shop at a more expensive place. And then people will be like, oh, fast fashion is unsustainable. Bitch, the whole world is unsustainable. Welcome to Earth. Yes, we are very wasteful. Yes, we use sweatshops, and, that's the way capitalism works. Do I agree with it? No. But I feel like in the black community, they don't realize that they're overspending, or they promote this culture of overspending. They promote flex culture. Oh, just get a designer bag, and, then you'll look more old money. So just spend money on like YSL and like, spend $10,000 on a purse, but then just make sure that the name brand doesn't show, and then that makes you look old money. So imagine going through all this drama just so you could attract someone lighter than you. If that's not colorism, I don't know what is. So the Exoticals are colorists, yet you've got people who are spending all their free time watching all these live streams of how to dress to attract a white man at the golf course. Also, I thought it was really interesting how in the black female community, being a baby mama is obviously very looked down upon because most people view that as kind of like a generational curse in the black community. But you've got women celebrating unambiguous black women who choose to be single mothers to a biracial baby. Because apparently, being a single mother to a biracial baby is still better than just being single and unambiguous with no baby at all. So there's this obsession with approximating themselves to anything that's lighter than them. So if your boyfriend's lighter than you, you win. And by the way, I want to talk about Aniya and KC really quick from Love Island. I know most of you guys on here don't watch Love Island, which I actually appreciate. Thank God. Thank God my audience is actually more evolved than that. But no, I did notice how people are saying that KC is a colorist, which I tend to agree with because why wouldn't he be? He did pick TT, who is a little bit lighter than Aniya. Him and TT are not compatible at all. They're actually even less compatible than how he was with Aniya. But the thing with TT is she's ghetto and she's from the hood. Apparently she had threatened to pew someone, and she has a criminal record and everything. So, that fits with KC, because he's a bum, he's a dusty as well. So that it makes sense that he would prefer a dusty woman. But let's not forget that TT is slightly less dark compared to Aniya. So they're really just two sides of the same coin. So saying that KC's colorist and then suddenly nobody in the black female community is colorist, it's laughable. And have you ever noticed that on the internet, literally they'll call everybody colorist, texturist, and featurist, but somehow if you're a dark-skinned black woman, it's impossible to be colorist. It's impossible to be obsessed with anyone lighter than you. It's impossible to be a featurist or texturist. And when it came to Aniya on the show, I noticed that she did have a tendency to go for any of the lighter men, but none of those men were checking for her. And then people said that Corbin was a colorist because he was not attracted to Aniya during the challenges. Like, they have all these cringy challenges on Love Island where they have to kiss each other and stuff. So people were saying, oh, Corbin, he's colorist because, his dick is not getting hard during the challenge. First of all, do you see what I mean when I say they're desperate for light skin validation? They're desperate for white validation. Any man who's lighter than them, they're dick watching him. They're going to be paying attention and examining, okay, who does he think is cute? Who does Corbin think is cute? Who does Sincere think is cute? Who does Drewski think? Who are their crushes? Well, what kind of women do white guys like? Well, they like dark-skinned black women. Okay, so now my self-esteem is higher because white men like me. Have you ever seen women brag about that on the internet? They brag and they flex on how desirable they are in the eyes of white men. They'll be like, oh, I'm so desirable. All the white men love me because I'm super dark skinned and I have an afro. And it's like, the fact that you're bragging on an invisible white man is crazy to me. If that's not colorism, I don't know what is. And it's actually funny because I'll have people coming into my comment section, and they come into my comment section so they can announce to me that all the biracial men like them, all the light skinned guys like them, and treat them better than dark skinned black men. And it's like, okay, you're still bragging though on a man. You're bragging on your desirability in the eyes of a man who's lighter than you. So again, if that's not colorism, I don't know what is. You're bragging that somebody white likes you. You're bragging, oh, well, my husband is biracial. Oh, well, all my best friends are biracial. Have you ever been around that sort of black girl where she brags about all of her biracial friends? She'll be like, oh, well, my best friend from childhood, she's biracial. And then she'll try to prove it to you by showing old Facebook photos of like all her biracial friends. So again, it's this desperation for acceptance from anyone who's lighter than you. The lighter the person is, the more valid they are. That's pretty much the message that they're sending. That is the subliminal message that the black female YouTube community is sending in 2026. The message is, don't get with anybody dark skinned. Do not create dark skinned black children who are unambiguous, because that means you failed. That means they're dusty, right? Having a black father is dusty, right? So you can't create like, kind of like a reincarnation of yourself or whatever. You cannot birth your own image if you're a dark skinned black woman, because if so, then that means you failed and like your baby daddy is dusty, your husband's dusty. So anything that's black is automatically dusty. And then anything where you're birthing mixed children, or you have the potential to make these mixed Blasian children like Aniya, oh, well, that's viewed as being good. And for all the people who are going to say, oh no, Exoticals United, they're only supporting Aniya and the Asian guy because he treated her well. Okay, but snakes are always nice in the beginning. Any guy who's manipulative, of course, he wants to stay on the show. If there's $100,000 on the line, yeah, of course he's going to be nice. So the fact that black female Love Island fans are already they're standing all the non-black men who are with the black women. They're automatically rallying behind those couples, and it's like, you don't know anything about their character. So that's how I know you're being colorist, texturist, featurist, and racist. So I don't want to hear anything else about, oh, the Exoticals are being colorist. No, you're actually colorist because you will support any couple where the man is lighter than the woman. And remember when they used to make their colorism content, one of their main complaints was in the movies, they never show where the woman is darker than the man. So remember, that's one of their biggest fantasies. She wants to be the darkest one in the house. She wants to be the darkest one in her family. She wants her boyfriend lighter than her. She wants her children lighter than her. And even if you look at the trends of the types of black men that a lot of black women follow in 2026, in terms of celebrities, they're off of the dark-skinned black men. They don't give a fuck anymore. It's more so about the light-skinned guys. Chris Brown is out here thriving despite abusing women. He's out here thriving. He actually raised his prices in order to take photos with those unambiguous women. So instead of it being like $1,000, I think now it's like $1,500 for him to be willing to take pictures with his black female audience. So they're worshiping the Chris Browns. They want the Aaron Pierres. They want the men who are lighter, or the men who are just white. They're not black at all, because like I said, most of them view it as being more validating when they are in proximity to the white community or the non-black community. Remember that statue of the black woman who had on like this crusty outfit or whatever? I think she just had on like jeans and leggings, and then people were upset. They were like, why didn't you show her in a suit? Why didn't you show her as a police officer? Why didn't you put her in a better outfit? Okay, even the fact that they brought that up, that shows that they want to be validated by a white society. Corporate America, who runs corporate America? What race? What ethnic group of people are the most dominant in corporate America? Definitely white people. So even the way that a lot of black women create this lifestyle content, it's always based on, oh, I'm a corporate baddie. So they're celebrating working for the white man. They're celebrating working for companies that are owned by white people. They're literally bragging about it online. Go look it up. Go type in corporate baddie black girl. Type that in onto YouTube or TikTok, and you're going to see all these women bragging about these major white corporations that they work for. They brag about having a white manager. They love having that white male manager, or being in a company that has majority YT people in it. You'll see them bragging about going to PWIs. They look down on HBCUs. They think that HBCUs are like more dusty or whatever because it's black. Anything black equals dusty. So you'll see them bragging about, oh no, I go to a school with all white people. I go to a school that has predominantly Asian people. Even if you look at the travel content in the black female spaces online, the majority of the places they travel are non-black areas. They're going to fucking Italy and complaining and saying, oh my God, they're so racist in Italy. And it's like, okay, first of all, a person can be racist anywhere. Secondly, who told you to go to Italy? Why aren't you going to Africa, bitch? Why ain't you going to Nigeria? Since it's so amazing, since Nigeria is so fucking awesome, why aren't you going to Nigeria? Take your ass to Ghana. Why aren't you going over to these African places? Oh, because you associate more status with being in these European places. They call it like a Euro summer. Having a Euro summer is associated with elegance, right? It's elegant because it's European. So going to Europe in the summer, that means you're elegant. They pedestalize exoticals who marry white men like Nara Smith and Meghan Markle. So they pedestalize us because they feel like we have more proximity or we're more dateable or whatever to white men. So a lot of women, they want to date white men so they can prove to the exoticals how desirable they are. So the whole point is to say, hey, look, I'm just as desirable as you. Look, I'm put on a pedestal. Oh, you thought you were better than me because you're light skinned? Guess what? I created a light skinned baby. So that's why they randomly bring it up. They're bringing it up as a flex. What they're saying is, I know more about light skin than you because my daughter is light skinned. My sister is light skinned. So now I'm the expert on light skinned people. Well, my half sister is biracial. So now I'm the expert on biracial people. Has anyone noticed that? There's this obsession with living vicariously through others. And even when it comes to fashion, think about why they make fun of you for wearing certain brands of clothing. Well, what types of brands do black women worship the most? Well, they worship all the non-black brands. So brands like Zara, that's not a black-owned brand from what I know. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all these other things, Balenciaga and all that, those are not black-owned brands. So again, they're obsessed with anything that is not approximated to blackness. Anything that's more approximated to whiteness. Any sort of corporation or company that is a part of white culture, that's what they're going to be bragging about the most. So it's hilarious how, as an exotical, when you're a child, they make fun of you for acting white, talking white. They make fun of you if you naturally were a descendant of white people. Maybe your mom's white, your grandma's white, whatever. So they'll make fun of you for that. But then those same women, when they become adults, they are literally some of the most colorist, texturist, and featurist people that you've ever seen in your life, because they make fun of mixed women who look black, for example. So if you're dark skinned, maybe you're multiracial and you have a darker skin tone, they're going to make fun of that and say, oh, well, you're not as pretty, you're not as acceptable, basically. And then when you ask them, okay, well, what makes her not acceptable? Why is she not accepted in the mixed community? Oh, okay, it's because she's too black. Has anybody ever noticed that? That's always their number one talking point against a person in the mixed community. They'll say, your hair texture's too black. It's 4C, so it's basic. That's just regular. Anything black is associated with like being regular. But then if you as an exotical, if you embrace your blackness, or if you're like, I don't know, kind of Afrocentric or whatever, then they'll say, oh, you're appropriating blackness, or like, you're overtaking blackness, you're jumping in and out of blackness, you're basically like performing a psyop, you're basically co-opting blackness. They'll call you a colonizer. They'll say that you're colonizing the black community by being a multiracial person. Meanwhile, those same black women are begging to be colonized by white men's dicks. They're begging to be first in line to suck white men's dicks. Let that sink in. They're on dating apps, literally creating AI characters of light-skinned women so they can attract white men, or they're doing it so they can be monitoring spirits. That's another way to tell if a woman's colorist, actually. Who is she monitoring? Whose Instagram is she stalking? What celebrity is she the most obsessed with? Who is she stalking the most? Because a lot of women, I also see a lot of black women in the tech space, they are literally trying to pimp out these AI exoticals. Like, I swear to God, that's what they're doing. Even some men as well, actually, are creating OF pages of like AI women who look like us. And then they're literally trying to make money. So it's like, okay, so you couldn't make it as an influencer. You couldn't make it on OF or whatever. So you're literally creating a fucking AI robot. Like, just let that sink in. Imagine somebody sitting in their bedroom creating an AI robot that looks like you. So she's thinking in her head, oh, hey, I'm not really that pretty. I'm not really that special. My skin tone is a handicap. My blackness is a handicap. So let me create this avatar and this character that's lighter than me, that's mixed or whatever. Let's make her have a flat stomach, of course, because I don't have that, because a majority of the black community is obese. So let's give her a flat stomach, maybe a little BBL, and let's create this AI character. Just think about that. There are black women in the tech sector right now telling other black women to create AI influencers with your phenotype. Oh, and by the way, you know that game Grand Theft Auto, GTA? I see it going viral all the time. They always have clips of like funny moments on Grand Theft Auto, and it's always a black woman with some sort of lighter skin, some sort of Beyonce looking, or like she'll be a dark skinned mixed woman. She always has an avatar on the video game that's like an exotical, basically. It's somebody who's benefiting from colorism, texturism, or featureism. Also, I found it interesting how black women were making fun of Soul from Love Island, and then they said that she looked like a Cabbage Patch doll. Meanwhile, black women were the same ones who were fighting for representation when it came to dolls and toys and Barbies. So it's like, okay, at least Soul has representation in the first place. You're over here saying she looks like a doll. Meanwhile, you spent decades begging the industry to create toys that look like you. So isn't that ironic? The same thing that they insult you for is the same thing that they desire themselves. So they will insult you for acting white or for having a white family member or whatever, for being light skinned. Meanwhile, they want to create a baby that looks just like you. They want to go and marry a Hispanic man. They make fun of you for being Hispanic or whatever. Meanwhile, they're secretly sitting in their rooms on Duolingo. They've been practicing Spanish for 5 years, trying to learn Spanish so they can date a Mexican guy. So they spent all that time trying to convince you that you were so mediocre, but then those same women are going out of their way to try to marry into those communities. They're trying to marry into white, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander communities so they can create these mixed children. And by the way, when it comes to Love Island and Aniya, I'm just thinking of random things as I'm talking, but like I saw that Carl, the non-black man that came in there, he was like, "Oh yeah, I still want to explore my connection with you, Aniya, but at the same time, my guard is up." But then you had black women in the comments saying, "Oh no, his guard is not up because he was touching Aniya's thigh." So it was literally going viral. They were like bragging about the fact that this Carl, non-black man, touched Aniya's thigh. So do you see what I mean about being validation starved or being touch starved? Just because a man touches your thigh, that doesn't mean that he's a good person and he loves you and that he has good intentions. Like, are you delusional? Do you hear how desperate that sounds? Oh, this man must really like me because he touched my thigh. Are you kidding me? Anywhere outside of the villa, that would be considered assault. But because this guy touched Aniya's thigh, oh my God, he's so into her. Oh, they're just going to live happily ever after. And then people are comparing Aniya and the guy. They're comparing them to Princess and the Frog. First of all, the Princess and the Frog, she is Creole, okay? So why are you using a Creole woman to represent Aniya? I thought that you wanted unambiguous dark skin to be the representation. So why are you trying to compare Aniya to Princess Tiana? Aniya does not look like the original woman who created Princess Tiana. That is a representation of the Creole community. Creoles are multiracial, so I find it interesting how even when they're comparing Aniya to a princess, they're using the Creole princesses as an example for romantic love. Isn't that interesting? So, like I said, most colorist people, they want to date us, they want to create us. We are the standard of living, the standard of beauty, and apparently the standard of dating as well. Because they want to live out a Princess Tiana Creole romance fantasy through Aniya. And I will never stop talking about the obsession with the Creole community. It's incredible to me. But going back to Aniya in the villa, she was obsessed with any guy who was lighter than her. She never really wanted KC. Basically, she got rejected by all the non-black guys there. None of them picked her. None of them picked Aniya. And I don't think it was because they were colorists. I think it's more so because she lacked social skills. Because if you look at Trinity, Trinity is also dark skinned, but Trinity's doing just fine. That's because Trinity has more social skills. She actually knows how to smile at people and talk to people like normal human beings. So Trinity's a little bit more feminine. She's a little more flirty. But it's interesting how Aniya, she didn't get picked by any of the non-black guys. She was drooling over Sincere, drooling over Corbin, and then she's currently drooling over Carl. So pretty much any guy who is ambiguous looking. She likes male Exoticals. She loved Sincere at the very, very beginning. And she was trying to actually get Sincere's attention, but that failed. Aniya actually wanted to be Sincere's second option. She didn't mind being the second choice to Melanie, and I feel like Aniya has a Blasian. She pedestalizes Blasians. I think she also pedestalizes just the Asian community in general, as well as the Hispanic community, because she was obsessed with Sincere. She wanted to try to get into Sincere's friend zone, despite Sincere being a trash person. She didn't care about that. And then I noticed that whenever Trinity would give Aniya advice, Aniya would ignore it. Trinity was always there for Aniya. Trinity was always like a real ass bitch towards Aniya. Trinity actually told her from the beginning, hey, KC is trash. Hey, he keeps playing in your face, Aniya. You deserve better. You shouldn't be with that type of guy. And Aniya ignored her for an entire month. She didn't give a fuck what Trinity said. But then, the other day, as soon as Melanie, the light-skinned Afro-Latina, as soon as she says, hey, Aniya, you deserve better, you should move on, then suddenly Aniya changes her tune. So you ignored the dark-skinned girl's advice, you discounted Trinity, because what? You don't want to listen to anybody dark, I guess. But then suddenly when a light-skinned Afro-Latina tells you the exact same thing, then suddenly you have this epiphany and you want to have this closure conversation with KC. So that is another thing that I've noticed as well, just about some black women in general. They're going to follow behind whatever the light-skinned women are doing. They will ignore other dark-skinned black women so they can listen to Afro-Latinas or anybody lighter than them, like I said. So it's copying whatever the lighter women do while simultaneously chasing after men who are lighter, and then of course creating babies who are lighter than you as well. And then I saw recently they were talking shit about some of the babies being darker skin or being like kind of brown skin or whatever. They were talking about, I don't remember which Kardashian baby it was, being brown skinned and mixed. And same thing with Danny Lay's baby. They were saying, oh, I hope she comes out brown. I hope she's not light skinned, because that's God humbling you. So you're literally admitting that God's way of humbling a person is by creating someone who's not light skinned. Ma'am, do you hear yourself? Oh, and another thing just popped up in my head about Aniya from Love Island. She also mentioned that she does not feel beautiful in the villa. So compared to all the other light-skinned girls, Trinity already has Bryce validating her. So like I said, she already has that white validation. And I believe that Trinity is actually going to win Love Island. I believe Trinity and Bryce will. I could be wrong, but I mean, that's what I think. But she said that she doesn't feel beautiful. Well, why not? Well, it's because you're surrounded by all these light-skinned women. It might as well be called Light-Skinned Island. Forget Love Island. This is Light-Skinned Island, bitch. You got Melanie. There was Soul on there. You got Kata on there. Pretty much anything that's light, bright, and damn near white, that's the majority of the villa. So I found it interesting that Aniya also said that she didn't feel beautiful. As soon as male validation was removed, she literally says, I don't feel beautiful. None of the other girls said that in the villa. I never heard Kata say that. Kenzie didn't say that. Nobody said that, whether they were single or not. And so I think Anaya is just a good case study on women with inferiority complexes and how a lot of times their self esteem hinges upon white male validation or, the validation of a man who's lighter than them. And if they can't get that, they will settle for the black guy. If they can't get that, they'll settle or kind of use this black man as like a placeholder. Or they might try to make it work with the black guy. Some of them will think in their heads, maybe this black man is different. Maybe this guy is not dusty. And then they get screwed over. And also, my question is, okay, if you're telling me that your fathers are all dusties, your grandfathers and all the men in your lineage are dusties, you're telling me that your mothers didn't even teach you how to clean your kitty cat. So now you have to make all these femininity videos where you're showing women how to wash their ass. You neglected your hair, or your own mother neglected your hair. You're telling me that you had all of that dust and dysfunction in your family bloodline, but suddenly you're the most elegant, most leveled up, most perfect blueprint that anyone has ever seen. Suddenly, you're a better princess than Princess Tiana, who, by the way, is a Creole woman. Suddenly, everybody else is just mediocre and ages badly, and they don't know how to do their hair. You want to bully Soul and say she doesn't know how to do her hair. Meanwhile, Anaya's wig was stiff as a board. She had the stiffest wig of 2026, and then you have people defending it, saying, oh no, you guys need to stop filming her from these angles. So you say that it's just a bad angle. Where was that energy with Soul? I didn't see anybody defending Soul. I didn't see dark-skinned black women defending Soul, saying, oh, you guys are just bullying her. Stay out of black women's business. Even though Soul, she claims blackness, actually. Soul is actually very pro-black. So I don't necessarily encourage that on my channel, but Soul is actually very pro-black, but I didn't see any unambiguous pro-black women defending Soul's hair. But I also thought it was interesting how on Love Island, Anaya said that one of her biggest fears is being embarrassed. And that's an overarching theme in the black female community today. I have noticed a lot of them do have a fear of being embarrassed because look at their tactics. Whenever they try to sabotage an exotical, what do? Well, that's the first tactic they go for is embarrassment. They think that us exoticals are easily embarrassed like they are, and that's not the case. A lot of us, we've already grown up with people questioning our blackness, our non-blackness, our hair textures, our skin tone, etc. So we've already built a thick skin, and also a lot of exoticals, we still have pedestals that we can always fall back on, for lack of better words. So we don't have that same fear of being exposed. We don't have that same fear of being embarrassed, like how a lot of black women do. I've noticed almost everything they do in black beauty culture is to prevent embarrassment. Make sure you cover your lace. Why? To prevent embarrassment. Make sure it looks like your scalp. Why? To prevent embarrassment. So you're embarrassed of everything. You're embarrassed of your edges. You're embarrassed of the scalp. You're embarrassed of your natural lashes. You're embarrassed of your face without makeup. Embarrassed of your natural booty. Apparently, you have the best bodies on earth, but then you still have to also get the BBL, and then you have to lie and say you didn't get the BBL, and then it's like, oh my God, is there anything that you are not embarrassed of? So I really feel like that's a cultural thing at this point. I think that a lot of times when you see them going to these image consultants and stuff, it's like, did you not have a pretty privileged role model that could help you or kind of steer you in the right direction? And if not, that's totally fine, because we talk about that on this channel as well. But one thing I'll never do on this channel is I'm never going to show any of the exoticals' faces and then try to say, oh, well, she doesn't dress well, or like, look at this exotical, look at her wig, oh, she's crusty. I would never do that. The whole point of this channel being anonymous, and the whole point of all of us exoticals being anonymous, is so we can talk about our shit. None of us are exposing ourselves. Nobody's on here showing the exoticals' faces or being like, oh, look at this exotical, oh, her life is so embarrassing. We don't do that over here in this community. So why is it that in the black female community, that's where we see that behavior the most? Like, if you go on those dating channels, basically the whole concept is, why can't I get a man? That's the whole content. It's why can't I get a man content? And then it's also, why am I not pretty enough content? That's what it is. Oh, well, you're not pretty enough, ma'am, because you didn't do the right color of braids. Oh, you need a different wig, or you need some different highlights. Oh, you should have done long acrylic nails instead of short nails. So it's literally another black woman critiquing black women from her own community. But I've noticed though in the black female community, there's definitely like this fear of embarrassment. That's one of the biggest fears. It's fear of embarrassment. So, of course, most of them don't want to date dark skinned black men because most of them are embarrassed by dark skinned black men's behavior. A lot of them fear being embarrassed in terms of their beauty enhancements. So, and by the way, I talked about this in a comment before where a lot of people in the black community, they're obsessed with the scalp. So like making their parts look perfect in their hair when they're doing box braids, or like making their wigs look like scalp, or I don't know, they're just obsessed with how their scalp looks. Almost like there's an obsession with looking effortless, but the real way to be effortless would have just been to actually be effortless instead of parting your hair to where it's falling out now, or wearing all these lace fronts to try to make it look like scalp when you could have just grown your hair out of your natural scalp. So I think there is kind of this culture of social anxiety as well in the black female community in particular, because think about it. Imagine walking around. You're anxious about colorism, anxious about texturism, anxious about featureism, anxious about who's racist, anxious about your body. Is your body pretty enough? Is your booty big enough? You get made fun of in the black community for having a small butt. So, but then you also get made fun of for having a BBL and having a big butt. So just think of all the different sources of anxiety that black women have permeated in social media culture. And then you got all these image consultants who are fellow black women telling other black women basically, oh, your standards are too high, or like, you're not pretty enough for a white man. You got to stop wearing those shoes. You need to change your shoes, and you need to change the color of your nails because white men don't like that, and that doesn't look like old money. And by the way, who is old money? What race of people is most commonly old money? It's white people. It's old white men. So they're doing all this stuff so they can appeal to boomers, the same ones that promoted segregation during the Jim Crow era, the same ones that oppressed and in some cases raped their own grandmothers and great grandmothers. Imagine being so anxious to the point where you can't even decide what color to paint your nails because you've been told that apparently you can only go white or pink. That's it. You can't do red nails because, the white men don't like that. Old money, they don't like that. And by the way, old money is basically code for like a white boomer. That's really what that is. It's like the Donald Trumps of the world. It's like a white boomer. And then I see a lot of people saying that they want to live a lifestyle like Sierra or Eve, the rapper. And it's like, first of all, neither of those women is dark skinned with broad features and 4C hair. So even people like Sierra, just because somebody's not biracial, it doesn't mean that they represent every single dark skinned black woman. And that's the thing, like the black female community will pick and choose who their representation is. And they don't realize that they throw exoticals in and out of unambiguous blackness depending on their talking points. So they'll say, oh, I want to live like Sierra. Okay, but do you look like Sierra? Sierra has a flat stomach. You don't have that. Sierra has a golden type of skin tone or whatever, kind of this caramel. She's got this caramel vibe going on. So the majority of the unambiguous community is not caramel. That's why they call it unambiguous. Caramel skin tones can be found in the Filipino community. It can be found in the Hispanic community, the Indian community. So there is a sense of ambiguity there when it comes to the caramel skin tone. So why are you using all these caramel black women to represent the soft life? So I think that they have so many problems, and it creates more anxiety for the unambiguous women who watch that content. So there's social anxiety. It's like this intense fear of being judged. Has anybody noticed that in the black female spaces online? There's always a fear of being judged, and then like whenever a black woman has beef with you, the first thing she's going to do is try to judge you for something. She'll try to judge you for your lifestyle or whatever, or call you broke. I've just noticed in the black community, there's this really big desire to prove to others how rich you are. That's another thing. Oh, I can't dress like new money. I got to dress like old money so I can impress the white boomers. Oh, I need to learn how to go golfing now and do all this stuff that's disingenuous. It's one thing if you actually enjoy a sport, it's another thing if you're doing it so you can try to prove something to white boomers. So do you see what I mean about kind of this desperation? Also, like it's almost some women are prone to being more ashamed. I just noticed that like in the black community, they will use shame as a weapon. So they do it to exoticals all the time. They'll be like, "Oh, well, Beyonce, well she bleached herself or whatever." They're trying to use shame as a weapon. They'll make up these random talking points and then try to shame that person out of their own beauty, or they try to like take away somebody else's status. I've noticed in the black community when it comes to how they deal with exoticals, they want to take away our status. That's their number one goal. Obviously that's never going to work because we have status in society. So even if the black community kicked out everybody, we still could go out into the world and we'll be just fine. But I've noticed that there's this culture where a lot of them think that they don't have any status in society. They think they don't have any status in terms of dating or in terms of their skin tone or whatever. And so whenever they want to come against someone of a different phenotype, their goal is to try to start off taking away from that woman's status. So they don't like when you get admiration. They don't like when someone compliments your beauty. They don't like to see your social media page growing. They don't like to see that your hair is growing and thriving or whatever. So they're always going to call out something to try to take away from your status while simultaneously using enhancements to increase their own status. So they make fun of you. Let's say you're wearing a wig. Like, let's say you're an exotical. They'll make fun of you for wearing a wig while simultaneously wearing wigs themselves. They'll make fun of you for having a big booty or something, and then they are secretly getting a BBL. Or they're doing all these squats. They're over here fucking squat pressing 250 pounds just so they can have an ass so they can attract more men. Imagine lifting 250 pounds every other day just because you want the male gaze. May that level of pick me never find me. But another thing I've noticed in black female social media spaces is that a lot of women need way more validation. They need a lot of reassurance. And Anaya is a good example of this on Love Island. She constantly needs reassurance. She constantly needs to feel chosen. And we all know, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want that, why the fuck would you get with somebody in the black community? Remember that KC comes from 16 children or something crazy like that? So KC, by default, if you come from a lot of siblings like that, my theory is that you are going to be neglected by default. Because it's impossible to be a good mother or a good father to like 10 kids or 15 kids. So even in KC's case, like with her picking him, she picked a man that has been emotionally neglected, and then she expected that man to suddenly be something he wasn't. And so I think that's another issue as well in the black community, kind of like looking for love in the wrong places and having this constant need for reassurance. Have you ever been around like a person that keeps asking you every 5 minutes, is my makeup okay? Is my wig okay? Are my lashes okay? Do my nails look okay? It's like, it gets annoying after a while. It gets annoying because it's like, I'm not going to sit here and try to rebuild your self-esteem. Everybody is not your therapist. Like with Anaya from Love Island, she doesn't need love. She needs a therapist. She doesn't need a boyfriend. She needs a therapist immediately. But I think that some women with inferiority complexes, they try to use friendships or romantic relationships or sex to heal their self-esteem. And you can't do that. That's not how you heal your self-esteem. A person could compliment you all day, but if you have low self-esteem, it's not going to really build it up. You kind of have to know who you are without other people around. You have to have self-esteem. That's why it's called self-esteem, not relationship esteem, not white male esteem. It's not called light-skinned esteem. It's supposed to be built on yourself. And I feel like a lot of black female social media, it's more focused on women who are kind of talking at other black women as opposed to helping them rebuild their self-esteem, or kind of like focusing on therapy and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of women are too busy grifting women of their own communities. It's more like every man for themselves or every woman for herself. And by the way, if somebody is unambiguous and they come from a long line of colorists, texturists, and featurists, I also think that it makes them sensitive to rejection. They actually have this phrase in psychology called rejection sensitivity. So it's kind of like this underlying fear where it's like, I'm afraid that people won't accept me. I'm afraid that people are going to judge me. If other people reject me, it means something's wrong with me. That is rejection sensitivity. And then there's this status anxiety where it's like, I'm afraid that people will think I'm a failure. I'm afraid of other people thinking I'm inferior. I'm afraid of people thinking I'm not as pretty as another girl. And so oftentimes what these people do is they rely on perfectionism to try to shield them from rejection. Being a perfectionist is not good. It's actually a sign of extremely low self esteem. It's a sign of having rejection sensitivity because you have a mindset of, if I'm not perfect, I won't be loved. If I'm not perfect, I won't be accepted. I have to be perfect. I have to look perfect in order to be considered beautiful. I can't have not one frizz on my head. I can't have not one pimple. My nails, everything from head to toe has to be perfect. So, in the Black female community on social media, there is definitely a culture of perfectionism. And I think it's more prevalent than what we see in other ethnicities. Because, for example, if you look at other groups, they don't mind having a messy bun, for example. Like that's a whole style, having a messy bun or like, just not even having your nails done at all. So just no manicures, no acrylics, just kind of like a clear nail polish. Um and so I think that some women, they're perfectionists, but then they resent the fact that they have to try harder. In fact, that's one of their talking points. They will tell each other, "Oh, you're dark, so you have to try harder than others." "Oh, well, your hair is nappy, so you have to try harder when it comes to doing your hair. You can't be effortless because your hair is type 4. Well, who told you that? You're actually a texturist if you believe that, because you're admitting that type 3 is easier, quote unquote, than type 4. And it's like, okay, easier in regards to what? Because the only reason your type 4 hair would be breaking off would be if you're trying to manipulate it to do something it doesn't naturally want to do. So if your hair grows in an upwards direction, why are you trying to force it to slick down every single day? Like, of course, that's going to cause breakage. That's not a problem with your hair. That's a problem with the actual styling method. That's more of a problem with your own way that you're taking care of your hair. But being in a culture filled with colorists, texturists, and featurists, it causes rejection sensitivity, it causes status anxiety, and it causes perfectionism. A lot of people who are perfectionists, they get analysis paralysis. So that means they never even start the YouTube channel. They never even write the book. They never create the music because no matter what they do, they're never going to think it's good enough, because at the end of the day, that's how they feel about themselves. They feel that they, as a human being, are not good enough. And so that's why a lot of them, they're not able to push out their creative art as much. And a lot of people, they say, oh no, well, it's just the entire industry that's like colorist, texturist, and featurist. And it's like, nobody said that you had to join Hollywood. You could have just made your own little niche market, or like, sold your product on Instagram or something. You don't have to be the biggest star in order to be successful. So that's another issue in Black female social media culture. It's this concept of there's only one way to be successful. And that means that you have to be the richest, the most beautiful, have all the most expensive products, have the whitest husband possible. And then, of course, you have to get into a hypergamous marriage with this non-Black man or any man who's lighter than you. Get into the hypergamous marriage, quit your job, and then become a trad wife. And then you have to create babies who are lighter than you and whose hair is looser than yours. You need to create babies that have smaller noses than yours. When are we going to start talking about the obsession with noses in the Black community? When are we going to address that? You got people who are claiming that Exoticals are colorist, texturist, and featurist. Well, you guys are actually some of the most featurist people, because why is it that the first thing you point out on a biracial person is the size of their nose? I don't see people in the mixed community obsessing about noses as much as people in the Black community, the Nigerian community, etc. That's where they have the biggest obsession with nose sizes and, how big is your nose? Is your nose flat to your face versus having a nose that kind of like comes up out of your face? Having a pointy nose versus having a wide nose. So, when are we going to start talking about that? Do you notice how, ever since the Exoticals came onto the scene, suddenly people want to pretend like the isms never existed? And I've also noticed that ever since we came onto the scene, suddenly everybody wants to pretend like they care about nuance. In the exotical space, we're probably the first and one of the only spaces that use that term a lot, like nuance. We like to discuss the nuance of a situation. Nobody cared about nuance before the exoticals started clapping back. But now all of a sudden, everybody cares about nuance. Okay, so then let's talk about the nuances of colorism, texturism, and featureism. People wanted us to acknowledge our privileges. They wanted us to admit who's colorist, texturist, and featurist. Okay, so let's call out all the colorists then, not just light skin colorists, and not just male colorists either. I don't want this channel to center around men. Let's talk about the female colorists. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.